Previously, on Clayport for June 21st, 2025. Echoes of the Fallen. Boudoir of Broken Bards. In Einhast's boudoir, the air hung thick with ash and the acrid tang of spent magic as Red, Umbra, Eric, and Aloe nursed wounds from a fierce clash with two Elanings, smoky fey cats whose fiery claws left lingering burns. A curious dustbin and broom, tucked behind urns of soot by the door, stirred as if alive. Something invisible, perhaps an unseen servant, began sweeping the shattered vases and ash with eerie precision. Umbra, her fetchling eyes glinting, examined the gems she'd pilfered, and the party debated their fate. Keep them? Throw them over the wall? Red suggested scattering them across the boudoir floor to stage a fake crime scene. Umbra acquiesced, tossing the gems in a glittering arc onto the floor. But the invisible servant swept them into its dustpan, picked them out, dusted them off, and set them aside, thwarting their ruse with silent efficiency. The party paused, their gazes drawn to the instruments, lutes, flutes, harps, hanging like grim trophies on Einhast's boudoir walls. Their wood decayed, strings frayed by time's cruel touch, each a silent requiem for bards ensnared by her whims. Red, her aura dim as a shadowed star, sat at a dusty vanity, her face aglow in the flicker of its enchanted lights, her eyes tracing a journal page, listing those fallen bards whose relics haunted the chamber. She sang a soft, mournful tune to honor their memory, her voice weaving subtle magic to restore her waning energies, brushing soot from her auburn hair with care to avoid Einhast's hairbrush, lest red strands betray her presence. Ensuring no clues hid among the vanity's trinkets, she entrusted Eric with copying the journal's names, unwilling to steal it and risk exposure, her heart heavy with pity for the lost souls as she guarded their legacy and her secrecy in this eerie, almost hallowed sanctum. The unseen servant's broom, stirring nearby, swept in rhythm with Red's song, as if bewitched by her melody. Umbra, her fetchling eyes glinting with shadow plane secrets, shared her knowledge of the Elanangs they'd fought. They're kept as pets here, but in the wild, malicious hunters of travelers between worlds, toying with their prey and sometimes allied with redcaps. I think they're gone, for now, she said, her voice low, carefully omitting the obscura, the shadowy realm between the first and second worlds. Red lingered at the dusty vanity, murmuring to her reflection as she practiced her alibi should Einhast's guards catch them. Well, we were looking for a place for me to lie down, you see, and we were attacked by these cats, so we helped try to tidy up a bit. She tossed back a glass tube of healing elixir, its warmth easing the sting of Elanang's burns. Her mind wrestling with the grey etiquette of self-defense in a boudoir not explicitly forbidden, yet heavy with the weight of their violation of hospitality. Umbra, her eyes glinting with impatience, snapped, "We should clean up. We can't be walking around covered in ash." She tidied herself in the crime scene, deftly replacing the pilfered gems into the drawer with a rogue's precision. Her leather armor now free of soot. "I'm ready to go," she urged, echoing Eric's call for haste, her lithe form poised to slip deeper into the estate. Eric rolled up the copied journal page, his detective instincts lingering on the instruments, adorning the walls like grim trophies. "I wonder if there's a working flute or lute hanging up there anywhere," he mused, approaching a lute, its warped frame and snapped strings less usable than the bamboo prop flute he'd carved. Scratching his chin, he weighed the risk. Umbra, her tone laced with playful caution, suggested, "I feel like stealing Einhast's sex trophies is probably not a great idea at this point." "Maybe." Red,
Softening, called out, "Eric, honey, if you want a real instrument, I have a ney and ocarina you can use," her diplomatic charm cutting through the tension. "I would really like to leave here without taking anything," she continued, her voice firm yet kind. Umbra pressed, "So, are we ready?" Her words a spark urging the party toward the crypt's shadowed depths, with only a couple of hours left to seize their prize. Shadows of sorrow. The party slipped from Einhast's boudoir, their footsteps echoing softly as they wound down the spiral staircase, its worn stone a silent witness to their trespass. 2 floors down, they passed the door they'd entered earlier, its familiarity a fleeting comfort, and descended another flight to a new, untested door. They paused, tension coiling, as Red joined Aloe and Eric to scrutinize it for traps, magical or mundane, their senses honed for danger. Umbra, her fetchling form melding with the shadows, slinked out of sight, her voice a low warning. "Let's not get distracted." Eric, his halfling ears keen, pressed close to the door, catching the faint murmur of voices, the rustle of branches in the wind, and the gentle gurgle of a fountain. "It leads to a garden. Let's move on," he said, his detective instincts urging focus on the turning leaf's trail. "Good call," Red agreed, her diplomatic nod steadying the group. 3 more rotations down the spiral staircase. They left the ground level behind, the stairwell opening to an archway framing a thin, pitch-black hallway that swallowed light like a hungry void. "That's very dark," Eric murmured, his crossbow gripped tightly. Red opened her fancy, overstuffed scroll case. "Eric, I have 2 dark vision scrolls for just such a case as this. Here, cast this on yourself for an hour of dark vision. You'll use one, and I'll use one." Eric cautiously unfurled the scroll, his nervous whisper sparking a faint tingling around his eyes, like a soft hum of magic. He blinked and shook his head, and in an instant, the world snapped into focus. A switch flipped in his mind. The oppressive void gave way to a stark, grayscale vista, the hallway's smooth stone walls and worn floor tiles, sharply defined, devoid of color's warmth. A heightened awareness surged within him, every crack and corner revealed, urging him to tread cautiously through this monochrome domain. "Who?" Eric gasped, his gaze darting to his companions and the newly unveiled shadows. Red's face mirrored his wonder as the group extinguished all other magical lights, casting her auburn hair in shades of gray. Aloe simply pulled his obsidian goggles over his eyes, their lenses glinting as they pierced the gloom. About 60 feet down the pitch-black hallway, Eric's sharp halfling eyes glimpsed the corridor widening with vague shapes protruding from the walls. People, perhaps, frozen in eerie vigil. "Be on your guard," he whispered. Red sent out pulses to detect magic, her psychic senses probing the oppressive gloom. The party advanced cautiously. Umbra, her fetchling form a wisp of shadow, led with silent grace. Then Aloe, Red, and Eric trailed, their steps measured on the worn stone tiles. As they neared, a magical light flickered on, casting stark illumination across a door and still figures emerging from the walls. Statues of musicians, frozen in mid-performance, their stone eyes hollow. Were they bodies of dead bards or mere sculptures? Red felt a surge of potent magic, the door radiating an overwhelming aura. "The door is the most powerful magic here. It's so powerful I can barely tell there's a magic light," she whispered, her voice tight with awe. Umbra, her eyes glinting, leaned close and whispered to Red, "Don't you sense emotions from objects? When you detect their magic?" Red answered, keeping her voice low. "Right now, I just feel the magic." "Yes, My psychic powers have something to do with emotional acceptance, but that's on a subconscious level, not the same as my conscious mind training, which is how I detect magic. I'll explain later, maybe over a glass of wine. For now, I'd have to touch those objects to try and glean their emotional resonance, and I'm not sure I want to touch something this powerfully magical. Or maybe if I spend some time here focusing on emotions mixed into this magic area. On closer inspection, the statues revealed their details. 2 cellists, a violinist with a drum in his lap, and a harpist, their stone forms poised as if playing for eternity. Umbra whispered, "Red, how do you feel about playing your ney?" Red glanced at Aloe and Eric, asking, "Do y'all see any other way out? Any hidden doors or panels?" Both shook their heads. No, Eric's keen gaze scanning fruitlessly. Umbra, "Yes, I think playing the ney might be nice. But let's think about what Einhast would do here. She likes anguish. She seeks anguish. So if I were her, I would sing a song of anguish and yearning for my dead favorite bards and lovers who've been buried down here as I come to visit them." Red drew her ney, its polished wood warm in her hands, and began to sing, her voice faltering slightly, not her finest performance. "Oh, delightful pain of longing for those long gone," she sang, then played a sad, wavering tune on the ney, repeating, "Oh, delightful pain of longing for those long gone. Oh, delightful pain of longing for those long gone." Suddenly, to the party's shock, the 6 stone musicians stirred. Their carved limbs seemed to twitch as if straining to play their silent instruments. A haunting, ghostly melody echoed. Its off-putting notes reverberating through the stone. Chilling the soul. Red deduced Einhast's cruel intent. These statues were placed to evoke anguish. Yet they held no key to the door's magic, which pulsed with a separate, formidable enchantment. She pointed her ney at Eric, her voice laced with grim resolve. "Here, you want to try?" Eric, his eyes wide with unease, shook his head. "I think this might be some sort of magic lock," Red declared, grimacing. "And I think Einhast comes down here to feel bad. She likes to feel bad." She rallied the group. "Everyone, follow my lead." Pulling a hood over her head, she slipped into character, her psychic empathy channeling Einhast's twisted desires. Aloe offered, "Maybe we could bring out Eric's smokestick to get us crying." Umbra stepped cautiously to the door, avoiding its surface, and unleashed a theatrical wail. Oh, what a tragedy, that so many lives were lost failing to appease the mistress, and what a terrible shame that they've all been collected here. Red, draping a black veil over her face, joined in with a piercing wail, her voice trembling with feigned sorrow. Eric, out of sheer curiosity, tossed a copper piece at the door to see if anything would happen. It bounced off with a dull clink, landing uselessly on the stone floor. Umbra, her patience fraying, pressed against the door, and to her surprise, it swung open effortlessly, revealing a vast, shadowed chamber of columns and arches, lined with 8 or 9 sarcophagi along its edges. At its heart stood a dais, where a stone-carved knight lay, a glowing bell jar cradled in a niche at its head, the turning leaf shimmering within. Wraith of the Bard's Wrath. Aloe pondered how to wedge the door open, his cautious nature weighing the risks. "We should run in, grab it, and run out," Eric whispered as he draped his cloak of invisibility over his head, vanishing in an instant. Eric then very slowly stepped into the shadowed crypt, only his footsteps stirring the dusty floor, betraying his presence. Red whispered, "I could cast a magic bridge so you could walk right up to it, Eric." Umbra also. Creep stepped in beside him, unwilling to let Eric face the chamber's perils alone. Eric edged closer to the dais, his detective instincts probing for danger but finding none. Red whispered, "Also, I've got a 500-foot range illusion scroll. I could time it so when you lift the leaf, a fake one with the same weight appears. Think it'll feel convincing enough if I nail the timing?" Meanwhile, Aloe carefully wedged his pot under the door, aiming to secure their exit. The party debated leaving remnants of the sleeve Corvus had given them, Aloe suggesting, "Leave it in the door on the way out." Red, her voice urgent, whispered to Umbra and Aloe, "If I'm going to do that magic, I strongly recommend one of us hang out here and keep an eye out for any of the other people trying to steal the stuff, including the Opal chick. She might show up, and I'd rather not be surprised." Umbra, still tiptoeing behind Eric, whispered back, "I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think we're getting out of here without a fight. I think the moment we grab it, the door's going to shut on us, and all hell's going to break loose. Corvus said we could destroy it once we got it, and maybe we will do that." Aloe stuck darts into the door hinges, reinforcing his effort to jam it open. Red pressed, "Eric, do you want me to make that bridge or not?" "Yes," Eric whispered loudly, his voice taut with anticipation, staring at the cloche. Aloe kept a vigilant watch on the hallway. Red began quietly singing, her voice weaving a spell, and a translucent, 5-foot-wide ramp materialized, leading directly to the Stone Knight's dais, where the turning leaf glowed within its bell jar. "Let's all hop on," Red loudly whispered. She climbed onto the bridge behind Eric as he crept toward the statue, his eyes fixed on the prize. "Do we go on the count of 3, or do we go on go?" Aloe asked, his voice steady. Eric gulped and inched his hands closer. "Now," he said to Red. Red cast her illusion scroll's spell as Eric lifted the cloche. "I got it!" he shouted, too excited to whisper, clutching the leaf. But Red's illusory replacement flickered into existence a heartbeat late, the magic faltering under the crypt's oppressive aura. "Run!" Eric yelled. As Eric ran down the magical plank, the door slammed shut with a thunderous crash, shattering Aloe's darts into flinders and flinging his pot across the room. "It was worth a shot," Aloe sighed. Just then, dust and spider webs swirled into the air as the sarcophagi lids exploded outward. And 3 hazy, incorporeal wraiths arose, their spectral forms coalescing from the tombs, their hollow eyes fixed on the intruders. The crypt's air grew icy as spirits of varied ancestries, ghostly performers, their spectral forms clawing at the sealed door, coalesced in a mournful throng, their wails echoing off the stone. Eric, shrouded in invisibility, sprinted down the translucent ramp, the cloche tucked beneath his cloak, his voice frantic. "Do we want to leave with this thing, or destroy it, or what?" Umbra yelled, "I think either way we're in this fight, so stow it." "Corvus prefers it returned." Aloe added, "Try to save it until we know we can't." Eric, nodding, called, "Open your bag of holding, Aloe," extending the cloche toward him. As Aloe opened his bag, a green glowing wraith reached a ghostly hand into Umbra, who clutched her chest, gasping under the crushing pressure on her heart. Red drew a ghostly weapon scroll from her belt, swiftly enchanting Umbra's whip, its leather now shimmering with ethereal power. Finding no cover, she let the magic bridge spell dissolve, her thoughts turning to the creatures. Drawing on her traumatic memories of Einhast's bardic trophies and her studies of the First World, Red identified them, her voice urgent. These are her old bards, culled at culling nights like this, now restless dead wraiths. If they get a hold on you, like the grip of fear just used on Umbra, They can paralyze you. They are incorporeal, so maybe don't close in until you have weapons ready for that. Oh, and they have a weak fortitude, and I know their names. Empathy for these used, discarded, and trapped bards flooded Red, and she felt her magic threaten to swell out of control. Thinking of how Corvus might soon say her own name, she stood up straight and talked directly to the dwarven-looking wraith. Thrandath Steelback Stone Shoulder, I will find your missing music, your missing bagpipes. Then to her allies, figure out what instruments the others need. A red glowing wraith swiped at a red. Its chilling touch sapping her life essence, leaving her reeling. Eric, can you cast that ghostly weapon scroll on me? Allo asked, as Eric slid the cloche into the bag. Allo swung his hammer at a wraith, but it passed through, inflicting only a glancing blow against its incorporeal form. A yellow glowing wraith surged toward Red, its grip of fear clutching her chest, forcing a gasp from her lips. Allo, eyeing her pain, urged, "Can't you boost your resistance to that psychically somehow?" But Red could only gasp for air. Umbra, darting to a sarcophagus, spotted an instrument carved into its lid. "This one needs a psaltery," she shouted, naming the yellow glowing wraith, her eyes straining toward a third sarcophagus, its carved instrument too faint to discern. Eric unfurled his ghostly weapon scroll, murmuring its incantation to enchant Allo's hammer, then dramatically swept back his cloak, drawing his crossbow with a flourish. The crypt's chill deepened as a wraith surged at Allo, its spectral form enveloping him in a chilling robes of welcome. Allo shrugged off the assault, but the wraith's fearful follow-up gripped his spirit, sapping his life with an icy pull. Red, her mind steady despite the grip of fear, quaffed a theatrical mutagen and wove a spell she called Flashy Disappearance. Channeling a desperate urge to be elsewhere, she flicked her wrist, conjuring a puff of vibrant smoke that vanished swiftly, leaving her across the room beside a sarcophagus she hoped belonged to a wraith. "Yes, Vec Fieldfire, the Hinsalterist on the list," she declared, crouching into the shadows, feeling concealed, though the red wraith's glowing eyes seemed to track her still. The yellow glowing wraith lunged at Eric, its ghostly claws grasping at his chest, doubling him over. "How can they see me? I thought I was invisible," Eric shouted, reeling as memories of his father's wraith-fighting tales flooded his memory. Allo, his hammer now enchanted with ghostly power, bolstered its weight further with another spell, brutally striking the green wraith. He knew not to bother aiming at vulnerable bits, as its incorporeal form defied his ranger's instincts. Another wraith wrapped its robes around Eric, but he dodged its eerie touch, a swipe narrowly missing. Allo, watching, noted to himself Eric's leather armor may need tweaking to better fit his slight frame. Umbra, her fetchling grace fluid as shadow, darted to the last sarcophagus in the corner, confirming its carving. "A viola," she cried to the group, pulling a matching viola from beneath her cloak and placing it on the sarcophagus with a shit-eating grin on her face. "Ha, smart girl," Eric mumbled, his mind flashing to their boudoir debate about taking nothing, puzzled by her slight. A brilliant glow erupted from the sarcophagus, and the red wraith turned, sensing its instrument's return. It floated toward the tomb and faded into mist, its essence dispersing. "By Hindam's grace," Eric murmured, awestruck. Red, her empathy swelling, added, "Gulinda Striff. Go in peace." Eric raised his crossbow, sized up the yellow wraith, and fired the found mystery bolt. Its ghostly efficacy striking true, dealing noticeable damage. Allo, watching the bolt's impact, noted the special ammunition's power against the spectral foe. At that moment, a malevolent pulse of magic surged through the crypt, rippling from the sealed door, draining the strength of Aloe and Eric, the latter collapsing to his knees, trembling in terror. The chamber's walls seemed to close in, the air suffocating, robbing Eric of breath. As a psychic dread screamed in their minds, "She's coming!" The red glowing wraith struck, sapping more of Aloe's energy. Both he and Eric gripped in fear's icy claws. Red drew an illusory object scroll from her scroll case, unfurling it with a murmured incantation to conjure a perfect replica of a psaltery from Einhast's boudoir. It materialized atop a sarcophagus, gleaming falsely in the dim light. She sang to the wraith, her voice weaving its name in life. "Vec, field fire!" The yellow glowing wraith turned, floating to the sarcophagus to cradle the illusory instrument. But unlike the red wraith, it lingered, its form unyielding. Aloe, blinking through his bedazzlement, bashed the wraith twice more, his hammer's enchantment biting into the spectral form, and shook off the rest of the pulse he knew was from Geneville. Aloe realized something else was wrong within him, though. Umbra lashed her whip with a stylish flaunt, destroying the wraith in a burst of mist. She pointed at the remaining wraith by the sarcophagus, her voice a commanding roar. "You're next." The wraith's form wavered, quivering in fear, as Umbra's resolve fled anew. "Y'all, she's coming! The herald is coming!" she warned, her eyes locked on the door. Eric, still reeling from the pulse's panic, crawled toward the door, groaning as ghostly forms blocked the handle, their slashes tearing through his leather armor, leaving him bleeding profusely. Red unleashed her psyche-fueled healing to stem the blood, her focus unwavering despite the chaos. "We need to get the hell out of here. The House Herald is coming to kill us," Umbra yelled with urgency. Red's voice, raw and edged with an unfamiliar accent, echoed Umbra's urgency. "Yeah, I want the fuck out of here," her usual diplomatic refinement fraying under the crypt's dread. Hours earlier, Red had wielded her wand of pocket library to conjure arcane knowledge. Now a book materialized in her hand, open to a page revealing the door's enchantment called The Actors at the Door. Humming a soft lore master's etude to sharpen her memory, Red unraveled its secrets. The door could be unlocked with 3 precise thievery clicks, exercised with first-world natural expertise, or swayed with fey diplomacy if one knew enough lore. She also knew the ghostly actors could be briefly pacified by a captivating performance or acrobatic display. With an actorly flourish, she declaimed this to her companions, her voice commanding the spirit's attention to buy time for a safer attempt at the door. Aloe rushed to staunch Eric's bleeding, his resolve steady and his hands deft, despite his own wounds. "Thanks," Eric gasped, his halfling frame battered, blood seeping through his clothes. The remaining wraith, its yellow glow flickering, began to sense Red's illusory deception, its form stirring with suspicion. "Hurry up! I can't hold this magic forever," Red urged, her focus straining to maintain the spell. Umbra leaped acrobatically to Eric's side, applying battle medicine with precise care, her whip coiled as she soothed his wounds. Drawing on her netherworld lore, she identified Aloe's affliction, her voice grave. "Aloe, this is going to get worse if we don't stop the curse, and I can't fix it. You'll actually become one of these things if we don't stop it rather soon." Red, wishing she'd prepared better for curses, racked her brain for ways to hasten the door's opening. Eric The door will not attack you right now if you want to try again, she advised, her tone urgent as she held the spirit's gaze. Eric, his resilience tested but holding, proclaimed, "Wait! I think I might have a knock scroll for this situation." He pulled the scroll from his bandolier, unrolled it with blood-slicked fingers, and murmured the incantation, his focus cutting through the crypt's dread. "You have about a minute," Red cautioned, her psychic strain evident as she maintained the illusory psaltery. Eric, wiping blood from his eyes, still dripping from his forehead, drew his lock-picking tools and worked the door's lock, his hands steady despite the crimson haze. "Guys, I don't think we should stay here much longer. I think this thing is figuring out what we did," Red warned, her voice tight as the wraith in the sarcophagus scrutinized the false instrument, her concentration faltering while she sent bursts of psychic healing to her allies. Aloe recalled his scroll of Cleanse Affliction, ideal for the curses they faced, but set it aside until the others were safe, instead aiding Eric at the door, his knowledge of nature guiding an exorcism of the door's restless spirits. Umbra declared, "I'm going to try to distract these things with an acrobatic performance. Hope this helps." She launched into a dazzling sequence. Back handspring, front handspring, round off, back tuck, front tuck, aerial cartwheel, layout, whip back, side somai, her movements a mesmerizing blur. "I think it's working," Red exclaimed as the ghostly actors at the door turned, captivated by Umbra's display. A sharp click rang out and the door swung open. "I got it!" Eric cheered, his voice triumphant. "I told you I'd get it!" Umbra, her fetchling grace of fluid shadow, hollered, slightly out of breath, "Let's get out!" Heist's end. Red, frayed but resolute, replied, "We can go out the garden door, or we can go back to Philomena's room and go down the window ladder, which is my vote." Aloe responded, "I vote the window ladder. I think they might expect us to go out the main way." Umbra, recoiling her whip, reminded them, "Oh, hang the sleeve on the door, as though it got caught on the way out." She pulled the sleeve Corvus had given them from her cloak and hooked it on the door handle, staging it as if torn in a hasty escape. "Should we leave part of it on the garden door?" Red asked. "No, it'll take too long to go back through the garden, but we can crack the garden door open and maybe throw them off," Umbra replied, her voice steady. The party surged back up the spiral staircase, pausing to nudge the garden door ajar as they passed. A subtle misdirection. They reached the second floor and hurried down the hall to enter Philomena's room silently and undetected. Eric, still wincing from his wounds, swiftly tossed the special escape ladder, forming a bridge to the outer wall. Red sensed a perfect opportunity for her powerful new spell, and with a mere thought of urgency, paused time for everyone else, then darted across to the outer wall. "Come on, guys," she whispered as time restarted for the others, her weight anchoring the ladder securely. The party climbed across, their steps quick but cautious, the turning leaf safe in Aloe's bag. Aloe, the last to leave, dropped a spiky holly bush in the window frame, its thorny tangle blocking pursuit. As he crossed the wall, he severed the ladder with a decisive cut, ensuring no one could follow directly, the party's escape a desperate bid against the House Herald's wrath, with little more than an hour to flee the estate. The party descended the wall, their movements cloaked in stealth as they retraced their steps to the rendezvous point, a shadowed clearing some 500 yards from Einhast's estate. Pausing, they turned to witness the manor descending into pandemonium. Guests spilled out, scrambling onto horses or into carriages, their silhouettes frantic against the night sky. Windows flared with light, as if the house itself had been breached in a jailbreak, and armed guards formed a bristling cordon around the perimeter. Red, still catching her breath, murmured, "Well, we've done it now." As the group gazed into the crisp autumn night, the air unusually warm for the season. They lingered for 4 or 5 minutes, catching their breath, pulses slowing as they watched a carriage bolt down the road to their right, its early departure suspicious but too distant to discern details. Eric scratched his chin and wondered, "Well, are we sure we're in the right place? Do we just stand around and wait for Corvus to poof us bare?" Umbra cut in. "Oh fuck, we've never talked about how to get home." Red's brow furrowed, her voice tinged with unease. "Corvus never said anything about how to get back after our mission, did he?" Eric fretted. "Should we back up further? Hide? How long before they see us out here standing in the middle of the field?" Suddenly, the air thrummed, reality shimmering like a mirage, and in an instant, they stood within the Nightglade court of the Druids. Return to the Nightglade. Bewildered, the party exchanged glances, very slowly stepping through a portal that completed their passage, emerging from the great tree in the night court. Volris Birchtender, the head druid, stood at the threshold, her silent presence a solemn welcome. As Aloe crossed last, she withdrew her hands from the tree, the portal sealing into ordinary ash bark. There stood Corvus and Gilles, the latter holding a metal tray adorned with wine glasses and an uncorked bottle of wine, their gazes fixed on the party. Corvus eyed the party with a sly grin. "Are we going to drink this, or are we going to sing a tale of woe?" Red grinned back. "Well, I, for one, am ready for a glass of wine and a new pierced ear. Thank you very much." It was prickly but fun. Then, gesturing to Aloe, "He's got it! We stole it! We got out of there!" Umbra added, "And we come bearing other gifts." She deftly placed 4 pilfered pins from the battle map onto Gilles' metal tray, her movements precise. "Red, give him the map." Red, snapping to attention, exclaimed, "Oh yeah," and pulled the map from her satchel, laying it on the tray. "We found out the captain of the guard there is really frustrated with her job and might be trying to align with that Nuglub fella, and I bet they're willing to work against her," she explained, her voice laced with intrigue. Corvus picked up the map and studied it, his eyes narrowing. "Ainest is more beset than I knew," Aloe cheerfully exclaimed. "I'm glad she's beset." Corvus, smirking, replied, "Oh, me too. I can offer her aid and get so much out of her." Aloe, his tone turning serious, said, "And if there's another opportunity to cause her harm, I might be interested." Corvus, grinning wider, countered, "Ooh, I don't want to harm her more. I just want her beholden to me. This is going to be easy. You guys are spectacular." Aloe opened his bag of holding, retrieving the cloche and handing it to Corvus. As Corvus took it and lifted the glass lid, a scent wafted over the group, a crisp air, frost, the essence of true autumn, soothing and serene. Umbra's face lit with recognition, a flicker of memory crossing her shadowed features as the party stood in the glade. Eric, his patience worn thin by the whole ordeal, confronted Corvus with a pointed edge. "What exactly is this, Corvus? No fey riddles. A real answer. What actually and literally is this thing? Where did it come from? What does it do? Why did you give it to her?" Corvus, his eyes glinting with fey mischief, raised the turning leaf, a rose-like artifact, to his face, inhaled its scent, and devoured it, petals and all. "It's a little bit of me, and it was time to take it back," he said, his tone cryptic. Eric, undeterred, muttered, "Weird," then pressed louder, his confidence rising. You didn't answer any of my questions, Corvus. We risked our lives for this thing. Corvus, his smirk dry, replied, "Is that the boon you want? To know what the turning leaf was?" Eric grumbled. Corvus, unfazed, declared, "Well, it exists no more," and held out the empty cloche to Eric. "Here, you can have this if you want. It has its uses." Eric, his sarcasm biting, retorted, "Great, I'll put my muffins in it." Corvus, grinning, countered, "Yes, imagine putting your mother's fresh muffins in there." Aloe winced. Corvus elaborated, "They'd stay perfect until you ate them. Yes, time doesn't pass inside the cloche," and handed it to Eric, who gruffly took it, pulling his flask from his vest, unscrewing it, and taking a swig. Corvus repeated, "It has its uses." Umbra, her fetchling wit sharp, quipped, "Rude of her to have put it in the crypt." Corvus shrugged. Well, she was having guests over. Gesturing toward the monastery's entrance, he said, "Please, let's step inside." The group, weary, walked through the cloisters toward the dining hall, their steps echoing on the stone path. Red, grabbing a wine glass from Jill's tray, sighed, "It's been a long night," then asked, "Corvus, there was a woman in a blue dress with opals at the ball. Do you think the opals on her dress mean she has a connection to the city of Opal?" Corvus, his tone weary, replied, "It's hard to keep track of your world's geography, but there are places that have stronger connections than others." Red pressed, "Well, that was where the opera dream was, so..." Umbra added, "She seemed very uncomfortable after we told her that Viradio Savane also sent us," her words lingering as the party entered the hall. They walked down a torchlit hallway and into the dining hall. Corvus leaned in, his fey eyes gleaming with intrigue. "So her spy is wondering why 2 spies were sent?" he asked, his voice alight with curiosity. Umbra answered, "We made sure to imply that we were there to ensure she accomplished her mission." Corvus clapped his hands, his delight infectious. "Ooh, we can work with that. That is another foothold." Red sparkled. "I figured you might enjoy that tidbit, like an amuse-bouche. Oh, speaking of tasty morsels, I am famished. Perhaps another one of those mushroom tarts." Corvus gestured to his servants, and the party settled at the familiar table where his initial offer had been made. Servants glided in, placing plates of food and more wine, soothing the group's battle-worn spirits. Aloe, his vigor dimmed by the lingering curse, asked, "I'm feeling pretty bad. Can you use this scroll on me?" holding out the Cleanse Affliction scroll. Eric, also recovering from the battle, added, "Yeah, he's got a pretty bad curse on him." Jill, darkly elegant, stepped forward, took the scroll from Aloe, studied it briefly, and returned it. Placing her hands on his shoulders, she cast a spell without the scroll, her magic unraveling the curse's grip. "Thank you," Aloe said solemnly, pocketing the scroll for later. Eric, still depleted, cleared his throat loudly. Jill, unruffled, replied, "Oh, I haven't forgotten you," and leaned in, seizing Eric's head for a long, passionate kiss, her fingers squeezing his earlobes with startling force. Eric's eyes bulged, his face a bright red, his expression a mix of fear and delight as her magic coursed through him, mending his wounds. As she stepped back, he swayed, dazed with wonderment, a bit of drool rolling down his chin. Corvus chuckled, then drew 5 walnuts from his cloak, handing them to Umbra, who muttered, "Oh," surprised to receive one more than expected. "Remember, you each have a boon. You need not tell me now. You have 1 turning of your moon," Corvus explained. Red, her curiosity aflame, said, "Oh, I think I already know my boon." "You said you could tell me my name," though she wavered, pondering if asking about clone deaths might serve her better. So, does knowing one's name come with knowing any other information? Just so I know what I'm getting into, she asked Corvus. He replied, I can tell you how you were created and whether or not you have a past. His words hanging heavy as the party savored their reprieve. Red's voice faltered, heavy with exhaustion. Sadly, I think I kind of know how I was created, she said with a sigh, her diplomatic mind clouded by doubt. Corvus, his gaze piercing, asked, Do you want to know if you have a past? Red, haunted by Ezra the Bone Rack's words, replied, her voice softening, Well, I thought that someone who would know these things told me I was created as a clone copy of her. I have a past? Her words trailed into a murmur, lost in thought. Aloe interjected, Well, you could have been created by her, but 10 years ago, or 3 weeks. Red, grasping for clarity, asked, You said we have time to rest before we must leave. Until sunset, Corvus nodded. Yes. About 18 hours before you must leave or make a new deal. Red sipped her wine, her fatigue overtaking her. I may need to sleep on it. I don't know if I need a full moon. I think that's what I want, but I'm all of a sudden very tired. That was very thrilling, but... She rambled, her thoughts scattering. Plus, Einhast also really cannot coordinate her colors. The servants' pocket squares really didn't match. Corvus turned to the others. Eric, Aloe, do you know what you want? Eric, stirring from the days of Jill's magical kiss, snapped, Oh yeah, your boons. He cut himself off, wary. Does it come with a catch? Corvus, sipping his wine, replied, This is the price I'm paying for whatever you've done. If there's a catch, it's not from me. Pausing, he added, You have your boon. Eric, unconvinced, muttered, Okay, feeling no immediate change. Corvus, his grin sly, said, Spend some time with your spell books. You'll notice a difference. Eric, expecting something grander, said, Thank you. His tone tinged with mild disappointment. Corvus raised his glass in a toast, his eyes locked on Eric. I look forward most to working with you, Eric. You are a delicious challenge. He grinned, the words lingering as the party continued to nibble on their food and wine. Eric grimaced as he examined the cloche on the table. You know, I could put my coffee in this and keep it warm all day, he murmured to himself, turning the glass over in his hands. Yeah, and something I'm going to have to probably carry for you, Aloe quipped with a sour face. Corvus turned to Aloe. And Aloe? Aloe, his tone measured, replied, You offered me growth, but I don't know what you meant by that. Corvus, swirling his wine, answered, I'll give a similar boon to you as I just did the little entertaining man, Eric. Eric scowled. Hey! Corvus, smiling, pressed on. What? You're little, entertaining, and you're a man. Eric's expression darkened, bristling as he seemed ready to storm off. Corvus grinned and raised a hand. My apologies. Eric, who already has a disdain for what he calls fey nonsense, their inclination to answer everything in riddles, asked, What exactly did you do with the fey box we gave you? The fey box we gave you? Corvus, his gaze enigmatic, replied, Everything is useful in this transaction. I no longer have the box, and now someone owes me greatly. Aloe, probing, asked, Did they go willingly, the fey inside? Corvus answered, They were, given more work than they've had in a long time. Ha, well, that's what they wanted, lauded Umbra. Red, sipping her wine, asked, Are they done workshopping the Cali Inn? Because I could use a shower. Corvus, puzzled, responded, Workshopping the Cali Inn? That's been there for a long time. He added a warning. What about the Cali Inn? Just be careful in the Cali Inn. It's great for a single night, but don't go delving into its deeper halls. Eric, muttering sideways, grumbled, "The Cali Inn? What the... More Fey nonsense," sipping from his flask. Red, piecing together the Fey's power, said, "I think it might be a little newer than you know about," her psychic intuition aligning with Aloe's knowing chuckle. "How expensive is it to use that Fey box, anyway?" she asked, taking another sip. Corvus replied, "Ask that question when you have more to spend." Red waved a hand. "Oh, I know I don't have enough now," Corvus warned, "and you don't have a family to give up." Red, her voice tinged with memory, said, "Well, they once offered me a small service in exchange for a bit of my time, but Umbra, perhaps wisely, shut the box before I could give in to temptation." Umbra chimed in, "Yes, wasn't the price giving up a memory of yours?" Corvus nodded. "You were wise not to pay their price. They are a piece of chaos. They should have never been in your world where things aren't easily fixed. I could fix any changes to my realm if need be with a thought. That doesn't happen on your world." Red, her words slurring with fatigue and wine, added, "Yeah. They were going to do something with a local charter for duchies or something, I don't know. Which they completed, but never delivered, but still could," Aloe added. Umbra countered, "Or did they? Who's to say where they currently are?" Corvus, his Fey demeanor calm, reassured Aloe. "Aloe, you can think about what you want. We don't have to do it now." Rising from the table, he saluted them with his wine glass. "And now, I will bid you good night, as night is in the night glade. We will discuss things after you've had some well-deserved rest." Jill followed him out, her dark elegance trailing like a shadow of the shadowed cloisters. Not too long after Corvus left, our party, one by one, yawned and shuffled off to their guest rooms, exhausted from their adventure. Aloe lingered, spending some time with the druids, trading seeds and absorbing tales of Rowan. Wait, Ronan? No. Their memory must already be blurring. Vessel of the Lady's Will. After rest, the party gathered in the courtyard, the air heavy with the scent of dew-soaked herbs. Corvus and Jill awaited them, his presence commanding yet genial. He looked at Red and asked, "Do you want the information you asked for last night?" Red nodded, her fingers brushing the delicate golden chain linking two new studs in her ear. "Thank you again for my new piercing," she said, her voice tinged with reflection. The experience was a mix of curiosity, pain, and satisfaction. I suspect this conversation will be a similar mix, and then some. Corvus beckoned Red to walk with him, leading her along a garden path winding beyond the courtyard, leaving Jill and our party exchanging uncertain glances. As they strolled, the path lined with glowing ferns, Corvus spoke, his tone grave. "Your name was Sondi Menkash." She was a beautiful young woman in the Emeraldian Empire. Is that what you mortals call it? Though it may have some new name now. I lose track. And then the lady saw a resemblance, and that was enough. Sondi was taken. His voice darkened. And then she was killed, and then she was brought back in a form more akin to the lady. He repeated, and then she was killed, and then she was brought back in a form more akin to the lady. A third time, the words fell like a dirge. And then she was killed, and then she was brought back in a form more akin to the lady. He continued, and then in the vessel in which she kept killing you, she enchanted you again and again and again and again, until all that was left in Sondi Menkash's brain was her. Red's composure wavered, her mind reeling as nightmares of drowning surged. Realizations that it wasn't just a recent lake, but a vat, a vessel, where she was drowned repeatedly, awake and aware, her identity eroded by the lady's relentless enchantments. The weight of her past, a crushing truth, drownings in a vat. Her identity as Sondi Menkesh erased by the lady's cruel enchantments. She pushed the images down, locking them away for later, perhaps to unravel in her Lis-given treehouse in the wilderness. Her thoughts drifted to Ezra, the bone rack, broken like her, and Dion, ensnared by Einhast's whims for his looks alone. There's a himbo? No, I don't want to insult him like that. He's a man that Lady Einhast has seduced and enslaved to serve her until she's done with him. He was taken away from his family. Taken like I was, and I regret not being able to help him. Is there anything we can do to save him? Or know where he came from? Is he better off now never knowing? Red asked, her voice heavy with guilt. Corvus, his calm unshaken, replied, I could get him back, but I'm not really interested in spending my leverage that way. Red sighed. I know. Corvus mused, he wasn't there the last time I was there. Not sure how much time in your world that was. I think she's had 3 more lovers since me. Red pressed, fearing the answer. When was I taken? How long have I been like this? Do I have a family to go back to? Corvus's tone grew somber. It was definitely a withdrawal into consideration after Eric's father and his friends did what they did. The lady then retreated. She regrouped, and she started backing plans. And that's when she started creating new tools. Red, her voice faint, asked, In charm? Oh yes, Corvus confirmed. Do I age? She ventured. You're as mortal as any other mortal as far as I can tell, Corvus said. When you stop looking like her, she will have no more use for you. Red, her dread mounting, asked, Is there a self-destruct in me? Corvus shook his head. No, she disposes of them in the boring ways. Can she control me from afar? Red pressed. Corvus replied, Your brain is so akin to hers, and she has put in so many barriers to being dominated, that she just might have trouble dominating herself. Once the leash has snapped, probably best not to let her know you exist. Red began to ask how she might stop resembling the lady, but Corvus pivoted, his voice tinged with curiosity. The existence of an end makes the stories of your world confusing and fascinating. Red sighed. Well, apparently I've already ended a bunch of times. So did the leash break when I drowned in the lake during the storm? Corvus nodded. That seems to be when she lost track of you. They completed the garden's circular path, emerging back into the courtyard where the rest of the party waited, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. Corvus announced, Now it's time you're off. Gilles will take you back to the edge of the night glade to the standing stones and return to your own world, until we meet again. With that, he slipped into the shadows of the cloisters, his departure so seamless no one could pinpoint where he vanished. Farewell at the glade's edge. Gilles, with a graceful gesture, led them down a path toward the glade's edge, where the sky darkened, dusk from the mortal world seeping through. The party felt the weight of time returning, the veil between worlds thinning. Shadows in the forest seemed to watch, their gaze prickling. Umbra halted, prompting the others to pause, curious. She drew 5 walnuts from her pocket. She began to whisper to them as the air quivered. A misty aura bloomed around her, growing denser as she crushed each walnut. One, then another, and another, until all 5 were ground to dust, a thick, orbiting mist cloaking her like a shadowed veil. The rest stood silent, awestruck. Turning to the party, her eyes alight with gratitude, she said, "Thank you so much for everything you have done for me. This is where this part of our journey together ends, and I get to go home. And out of gratitude, I would like to leave." her words trailing as the mist swirled, the party stunned. Umbra turned to Eric. To you, I give this ether marble. I never used it. I'm sure you will find good use for it. It's sort of like a bomb. Eric, his halfling heart heavy, held out his hand, accepted the marble and bowed. Thank you, he said, his voice soft with sorrow. Umbra turned to Aloe, her poise unwavering. To you, I give this vital balm. Sure you won't need it? Aloe softly replied. Umbra replied, Yeah, where I'm going, I won't need it. Eric, his eyes shadowed with sadness, asked, Where are you going? Umbra's voice was gentle. Home. Eric pressed, Where's home? Umbra drew a small vial of blood of the wine and a sixth walnut from her cloak, turning to Red. This is called the Obscura, she said, as a filmy force enveloped her, rendering her form translucent, a faint silhouette in the swirling mist. This is how I travel, she told the group, her tone playful as she winked at Red. But I'm not the only one who can. She released the vial and walnut, which tumbled slowly into Red's outstretched hand. A sudden wind stirred within the mist, parting it like a curtain to reveal an inky void. Umbra stepped through, her form dissolving into the darkness. The curtain closed, and the mist began to fade, leaving only silence. Red, her psychic senses tingling, whispered, The Obscura. As the party stood in the glade, the weight of Umbra's departure settling over them, their mission complete, but their bonds forever altered. This concludes Previously on Clayport for June 21st, 2025. Echoes of the Fallen.